Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another IEEE-USA webinar, Chat GPT in the Workplace. I'm your host, Jonathan Cho. Our presenter for today is career coach and three-time best-selling author Elizabeth Lyons. Elizabeth stands apart in the coaching realm. As the author of transformative books like I Quit, Working for You Isn't Working for Me, and Hear Us Roar, her focus isn't just on coaching, it's on revolutionizing career trajectories. While many coaches offer guidance, Elizabeth provides strategic blueprints honed from her insider knowledge. Her coaching isn't just about securing promotions or navigating job markets, it's a career metamorphosis. Clients span the elite echelons of major corporations like FIS, Microsoft, and Amazon, attributing their successes to her coaching. Whether it's decoding the intricacies of career advancement, skillfully managing career crises, or nurturing leaders to ascend to their next level, Elizabeth's coaching delivers transformative, career defining results. Without further ado, I will now pass it off to our presenter. Welcome back, Elizabeth. Very excited for what you have in store for our audience today.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. This is quite the hot topic lately, so we'll cover a lot of ground here. I'm going to jump right in. So next slide, please. There I am. Nope, let's go back one. There we go. So thanks for joining. We had quite the outpouring of this presentation. I was surprised to see the numbers jump as much as it did. So thanks for being here. I appreciate that. What we're going to talk about today really is Chat GPT. There's so much out there about AI. Where are the jobs going? Where are they not going to be? What's going to happen to my job? How do I use it in the job hunt successfully? Can a recruiter tell if I constructed my resume in Chat GPT? Are they going to know? Is that going to hurt me or help me? How's this all going to work? So we're going to cover a lot of that today. I do want to kick off by saying I am not an AI expert. I am fairly well versed now in this, which is kind of nice. Fourth quarter of last year, I actually took a whole bunch of courses because frankly, I was concerned about my job. And I was wondering like where this was all going to land. And it had been out about a year. So I did a lot of deep dive in learning about what the tool was and thinking about it and looking at it from a job seeker's perspective and also a recruiter's perspective and how that would all play out. And what I realized was there also wasn't a prompts written, not a plethora of prompts really written for somebody who isn't job seeking. So after doing all of that, I wrote this presentation after all that I learned fourth quarter of last year. And so this is kind of my offering to all of you. And at the end of the presentation, I actually give you the exact prompts. So when you leave here, you could, if you're in job search, you could actually use them and they'll work because I tested and tested and tested them. So my name is Elizabeth Lyons. I am a career coach and I've been doing this so long. I've been doing this longer than there was career coaches. Now there's like a plethora of people calling themselves coaches. And I've been out here a long time, well over 20 years. What makes me very unique is I understand the stock market really well. I understand what happens in the stock market, why companies go up, why they lay off, those sorts of things that will impact a job search. And then I'm also still in the game. I think that's very unusual for a coach. Most of them are retired or, they're no longer in the game, but I can tell you that I most certainly am filling positions. And I've been doing this a very long time. And the beauty of that is I understand why somebody is hired, fired, and promoted usually before they do, because it hits my desk and I'm privy to that information. So that's what gives this presentation a little bit of a cutting edge there. Next slide, please. So here's where we're going to go. Here's our journey today. What is Chat GPT exactly? And many of you on this presentation probably know this, but I thought we could just level set by starting there. What I really want to show you and teach all of you is the approach that you use with the tool is as good as the information that you're going to get out of it. And I'm going to share with you my own stumblings with it and how I figured it out. And hopefully that will help you so that you can use it and enjoy it and not get frustrated by it. This will help you also get an edge on the job search. And then, like I said, at the end, I'll give you the actual job prompts and things that you can use in your search right now as you walk away from this. Next slide, please. So what is this thing exactly? You hear about talks about AI, you hear about talks about Chat GPT, there's Bard, there's Gemini. Basically, it's AI that pulls from text, articles, and content based on what's learned by a human. And really, we don't know what it doesn't know. So it seems to me it spiders out and grabs and pulls all this information in and then gives you an answer. The problem with that is you can get false information or information that isn't accurate or information, frankly, that might be biased or slanted. And so they're working through a lot of these bugs right now. Chat GPT is open source, so that makes it a little bit different. But I think as we get going into this in the next couple of years, I think what you'll find is could probably consolidate into one major tool if I were to predict, and we'll all probably end up having to pay something for it. Right now it's free. You can do the paid version. It gives you a little more bandwidth, a little more information, but really the free version of ChatGPT works just as well. So if you're just starting off or you're wondering what's the best one, this is the one I used. Doesn't mean that the others aren't as good. I'm not sure what would happen if you used my prompts at the end in the other ones. You certainly are welcome to do that. But for the purpose of this conversation, we'll just stick to Chat GPT. Next slide. Okay, so this I found very interesting. So a few months ago, I said to my husband, I just have the feeling people aren't using it. And he said, well, why would you say that? And I said, because I'm asking people and I'm finding that they're not using it. So I hear about it everywhere, but it's not a part of our daily lives like Google or something like that. It's not like that yet. And I can't figure out what that is. And lo and behold, I came across this study that's pretty recent. So it turns out that US and India use this tool the most. 24% of Americans have never used it. 18 to 34 uses it the most. 60% of the users are under 34. And this is where you start to see the big drop down. And this is where I was asked, people were in this demographic that I was asking, like, do you use it? Do you like it? What do you think of it? Only 9+% of 45 to 54 uses it. And if you're over 55, 5%, it drops, right? And if you're over 65, 3% use it. But the real kicker here was people that get on this tool spend an average of 7 minutes and immediately bounce off of it. And I found the same thing when I first started to use it. I didn't like it. And that was an issue for me. And I too bounced right off of it within a few minutes because it frustrated me. The other piece that I see is people don't know when to use it or how to use it. So there's lots of ways to use it. I gave this talk a month ago in an audience of 200 people, and one person planned his vacation with ChatGPT. One person literally wrote a family eulogy through ChatGPT. One person is on a macro diet, and she had ChatGPT design a macro diet for her that she said was better than the paid dietitian. So I think the other thing is we don't think about it immediately. Oh, let me go there. We think about it for maybe rewriting a document or fact checking a document or maybe a resume, but we don't think about it in everyday life. How could we use it? So I think that will change as well in the next couple of years as we get more familiar with it and it becomes a little more robust. Next slide. So here are the do's and don'ts. As you're using it, the first thing I would tell anybody is be really patient. So the first couple of times I used it, I was at 7-minute bounce, probably a 5-minute bounce. I was in there. I was frustrated with it. It would give me an answer. I didn't like the answer. It wasn't a full answer. I didn't find the answer to be helpful. And then I bounced off of it. So if you haven't used it or you haven't used it much, really get in your mind. You're going to sit with it for a whole hour and stop everything. Don't look at your text messages on your phone. Don't look at email. Just really sit and get comfortable with it and play with it and try really hard to be open. Because that was the other problem I had. I wasn't really open to it because I didn't like it. It was different and new. So that would be the first piece I would say. And then as you're going into the tool, you want to really think about how you're interfacing with it. And if you think about ChatGPT or any of these tools as literally your personal assistant, as a person, minimally a person that is going to help you to do tasks, you're far better off. If you approach it as Google, it's terrible and frustrating. And it's really a mindset turn of your thinking. You want to play with the different kind of prompts. If you're all out of like, I don't know what other prompt to say at the last minute, the last fail ditch effort, you can say to it, is there another way? Can you give me 3 more suggestions? I mean, you can keep going down that path. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not, but it's how you approach it is as good as the answers that you're going to get. What you don't want to do is broad questions. So I'll give you an example. You don't want to say, find me a flight to Denver. It's not going to work because it doesn't understand that. And it's got to be very detailed. So if you put that in Google, find me a flight to Denver, all kinds of airlines and times and dates and all this stuff pops up, from directly going to the airlines to other places you can get a cheap ticket. This does not work like that. You have to literally say, find me an airline ticket on this airline for the 2nd of July between 3 and 9 p.m. Think about it. If you were talking to a person, they would ask you those questions. They would be like, well, what time do you want to go out? And do you want to do anything else in the city? Do you need a hotel? Like if it was your personal assistant, they would ask you very specific things. That's why if you try this Google approach and broad, it doesn't work at all. So the more detailed you are, the better it gets for you. The other thing I have on this slide, which I think is important, is be careful how you trust it, right? Make sure that you verify some of your facts in how that you're using it. I think that's very important. There was a young attorney that lost his job pretty quickly because he went in to do some fact finding with, I don't remember if it was Chat GPT or the other tools, and it literally made up a fictitious case that never happened in a court of law. And he cited it in his paperwork, and the judge was furious, and he was let go very quickly from the law firm. And there has been stories like that circling around. If you look around for them, they're out there where people, ran a document or a sensitive document, an IP document through there and got fired. So, or got really bad information. So be careful. It still is new in inception. And you want to verify your facts and I always say triangulate your facts, right? So you go through there, you go through Google, you go through another tool to really make sure that you're talking about all the same thing here. Next slide. So this is my whole point here. If you're going to use it, give yourself time, and in every moment tell yourself it's not Google. So be really detailed. The fun part about it is you can actually ask it very specific things, like write this paragraph for people in corporate America that are diverse people, or you can get very detailed. Write this paragraph in a tone that's friendly but convincing. Write this document for professionals that are between this age group living in this area. And you'll be amazed at how it will come back with different voices, different tones, very different specific things that will be very catchy and very on target to that audience. From a marketing perspective, it's a fantastic tool. Next slide, please. So now this next part of the presentation, I want to go into how do you use this for a job search. So there's tons of ways, and we always think about the resume, right? We immediately go into the resume, and maybe it can help me write a better resume. So there's lots of other ways, though. You can use it for company research. Again, fact check. I would use it there, but I would also fact check. You can use it for the company research that you're looking for a target company, or for maybe a company that you are going to apply to. You can use it for interview prep. I found not many people actually use it for that, or use it to the depth that I'm going to show you. You can use it for resume polish. Your skills section, particularly technical interviews, your skills section at the top, you might run it through there. Your bullet points, you want a nice mix in your resume of accomplishment statements and also skills and things that you do. So it should be balanced in there. They can help you really polish those bullets. It can shorten it for you. You can say, I've got a 5-page resume. Can you pare it down to 2 and still make it, attractive for the audience? Can you make the resume so the ATS picks it up? You can use it for salary negotiation. You can use it for professional development. In other words, I'm looking at these jobs. What other certifications should I get in the future? How much do they cost? What else can I do within this skill set for professional development? Thank you notes are a great way to run it through the tool. Then you don't have to angst over what to say, how to say it. So we'll dive right in. We'll cover all of those with the prompts, and I'll show you how this goes. So next slide, please. So we're going to kick it off with resume prompts. So many people on this call probably have used it to kind of beef up their resume. I think I'm going to answer the question like, can a recruiter tell? Do we know when you've used it? Sometimes we can. So I would, especially if there's a lot of flowery, big words going on in there, lots of like descriptive kinds of words. The bottom line is, no matter how good it looks, if it doesn't look like a person wrote it, we're going to know. The beauty of it, though, is, and I actually put this article on my LinkedIn, I said it in a presentation, and then there was this proof source later. You know, you can write a great resume, and then if it falls apart 10 minutes into the interview, it doesn't matter to us because, you know, it's going to come out that you have a good resume, but you don't present well, or you don't have all of it on there, or whatever's going on. So regardless, I still think it's a nice way to put some polish on the resume if you do want to use it. So you can, here are the prompts you could use. Analyze keywords in the job posting and see how it matches to my resume. The other thing I would tell you is in the resume, what we found, collective we, myself, and others, if you take pieces of the resume and parse it through there in the tool, it works better than if you take the whole darn resume in there. So you might take chunks of it and sections of it and massage it, and whatever it spits out, you might reword it a little bit. Like most of it sounds good, but some of it sounds a little too good. You might want to put the human touch back in there, frankly. But what we found was putting pieces of it worked better. You can also say, you know, rewrite this section of my resume to maximize the keywords based off of this job posting. That's a great way to do it. You can say to it, act as if you're an ATS and review my resume to this job posting. You could say, write a resume. It's got to be 2 pages, use an active voice, and highlight the accomplishments. That, if you just use that, it's going to give you this bare skeleton kind of resume, and you're going to have to keep adding to it and keep running it through there. But if you don't know what to say at all, or if you have some resume, but it just doesn't feel current, or you feel like it's too short or too long, particularly if it's too long, you can do that. And it actually turns out some pretty good results. So that's kind of what I came up with on the resume prompts. And like I said, I did test all these again and again and again to make sure that they were going to work for you. So you could leave this presentation and use them immediately. There was an article I read the last couple of weeks, and it was like, is Chat GPT better than JobScan? So JobScan is a site where you literally cut and paste the ad, and you put it on this part of the screen, and on the other screen you cut and paste your resume, and you hit a button, and it goes, okay, you're 90% match, or whatever it is match. And it's a close call. Like Chat GPT is right up there with JobScan or some of those other tools that you might use to figure out if you're a good match. So I don't think you could go wrong with either one. This is free. It's a very good price if you're just looking for something to go through it. So you might check out Chat GPT on that. Next slide. Interview prompts. So here's what I know about interview prompts. The clients that I've had that have come through my coaching practice, and they're in my coaching practice, my clients are high-level technical individual contributors. Okay, so they're not entry level. You know, nobody's a college grad or their first degree. They're really mid to high level technical people, or they're executives. That's the bulk of my clients. So that's my sampling of my audience that I go out and ask. I ask them, if you ask it, I'm applying for this job, what questions could they ask me? Did you find in the interview that was accurate? And what we found was if they gave them 5 questions in that interview, 3 of them matched what ChatGPT told them it would be. So what's good about that is it's great interview prep, right? It helps you to kind of be prepared at the interviews. And the proof point there is the tool is pretty accurate right now today. Everything I say is timestamped today, because this thing can change in 6 months or a year so rapidly that the information may be dated. But right now, today, I can tell you with some good certainty that if you ask, what are the common interview questions asked by a CFO for my title? It will give you that. What are the 5 most common interview questions for this title? It will give you that, and it'll be pretty dead on. Who might interview me for my job if I'm an accountant, right? Like what other skill sets, who else could be on that interview panel? That would be good. And then you can end it by saying, what else should I ask you? What else should I know about interview prep for this job? What else should I do? It will actually give you information that might be really helpful. Next slide. Salary prompts. So I've given this presentation quite a few times. And I think this is like my 6th or 7th run on it. And I did it live in January. And this whole topic became like a big thing. So what I wanted to kick this off by saying, if you ask ChatGPT about what is the range for this position, it's going to be fairly accurate. There was this slicing and dicing about, well, how accurate is really accurate. It doesn't matter. Now you're looking at something you don't even need to be looking at. You just want to make sure the range is fairly accurate, right? The range is going to be anywhere between a $20,000 and $40,000 spread, depending on what you do and where you're looking. Where the numbers start to get interesting, or you're going to see a big differential, is the location, right? Like the location job post in Iowa versus New York or Texas. And also you're going to see a big difference in the numbers if the company is publicly traded, or they're privately held, or if they're a tech company. Those have different nuances in that salary range. But across the board, if you said, I want to negotiate my salary for this job coming up, here's what I make now, should I ask for an increase? What is the range for this position? It's going to give you pretty accurate information so that you can understand just what to expect. I can tell you in 2024, we're definitely not seeing big increases anymore at all. It's definitely not pandemic time. So I think it is wise to go into conversations educated about, what you could receive and what's reasonable, so you don't come out with some big number and accidentally offend them. You don't want to do that. So really don't want to do that. So I think it's good to just understand that. And the reality is thinking about your salary now, right? And what the job pays, and then looking at an increase that's reasonable, right? Like run the numbers. What's a 10% increase? What's a 15% increase? What's a 20% increase? And understand what those numbers are before you go into the negotiation process. But this is a great way to at least get some starting point. If you have no idea and you live in a state where they have not posted the rec range on the ad. In certain states, it's mandatory. Colorado would be a mandatory state, California, New York. They're going to give you a range so that you're like, oh, well, then I want that job. I want to be paid that. But what they don't tell you is that's just a range. They're just doing that to satisfy the law, frankly. The manager's budget has something to do with that. So it's going to come in lower or to the midpoint or less. And also internal equity plays a big part in that. So yeah, that's the range. But it's really voodoo math numbers. It doesn't really mean anything, to be really honest with you. I mean, it's something, but it's not likely. So you're almost better to go into the tool and understand, where it falls from a broader picture than looking at that range. Next slide, please. Development prompts. So this is great for IT people, engineering people. Certificates are a fantastic way that you can build your skill set really quickly. And it's a great negotiation point in the job interview. So if you're at second rounds or final rounds, I would really encourage you to ask, hey, do you have any educational benefits that an employee could use? A lot of the large companies, they automatically give employees a couple of $1,000s every year for continuing education. So now you can go off and get your certifications. So if you're in cyber, you could get your CISSP. If you're more on the audit side of cyber, you could get your CISA or your CSAM. There's lots of things that you can get in terms of your certifications and get them done and have the company pay for it. And then when you leave, it's portable. So that's the beautiful thing. It's a designation, the end of your name, and it's yours. So it's good to kind of go in and think about, if I were going to get a certification, what ones would be the best considering my skill set? And then for future career planning, what should I be looking at in the next 2 to 4 years? And you can run it right through Chat GPT and say, here's my title now. I want to be this title in 3 years. What certification should I be looking at and get? And where do I get them? How do I do this? So these are the prompts that you could use for that. Next slide. Thank you notes. So I have a thing about thank you notes. Thank you notes should really be just thank you. And in my last presentation, I was saying how, I've been in this field like almost 25 years, and I don't get thank you notes. What I get is emails that are a regurgitation of their skill set. So they always start the same. Hi, Elizabeth, thank you so much for helping me to get that interview. I just want to remind you that I have all these great skills, and I have this skill and this skill and this skill and this skill, and I'd be a great fit for your team. Can you pass this to the manager? And I'm like, okay, great. Nothing about that is thank you. That is 100% about you, your urgency, and your fear of not getting a job. And it's frankly, when you're in my line of work and you're, 20 plus years of receiving these things, you move them off your desk. But if you think that makes me remember you or endear you to me in any way, it most certainly doesn't. And anybody in my profession would tell you that. They just don't. So thank you notes. I run it through Chat GPT. Short, sweet. It should be 2 lines. That we would actually remember because you don't sound like everybody else crossing our desk. Write a thank you note expressing gratitude for the interview. Write a thank you note for executives to read after the interview. And this is my favorite one. Act as if you're receiving a thank you note from an applicant. How would I write the thank you to express sincerity? Now, I didn't say my willingness to take this job. I said, how would I write this to express sincerity or thankful, right? Or gratitude. These are great ways if you're just not sure what to say, or you're afraid it's too long or whatever. These are great ways to just run it through Chat GPT and get a head start there. Next slide. So future outlook. So I always like to start this slide by saying, we don't know. I mean, every single week, I post 3 articles at least on Chat GPT on something going on within it. I think this week I posted one on JP Morgan, and they're doing stuff with Chat GPT and stocks. I found that pretty interesting. There's other companies that have adopted it. When I see it in places that I know people don't know it is, I post those kinds of articles. So, my parting line on this, and I'll go down in history for saying this, ChatGPT and AI is in everything. It's like sugar, for real. It's in everything. And they haven't told you, and they're not going to tell you. And then one day we're all going to wake up and be like, oh my gosh, it's everywhere. And now what? And so I think it's really important to not be afraid of it, but to really start to understand the landscape and where it's moving and what are they telling us. So for example, it's all over medical, right now it's all through it. They don't tell you. It's just so many different places. I can't even begin. They're starting to look at it for financial services and banking and stocks. And like I said, it's definitely in medical because my husband and I found that the last 2 years in medical technology. And then also some of the coming wave is that people that are the boomers that are aging, that they'll be like a one database that will tie together a 1-point system so that, if they go to the general practitioner and then they go to the eye doctor and then they go to the hip doctor and they get a hip operation, and then they go to the pain doctor, that it's all in one area. But the thing is, your data now is all in one area, and now they're going to pull AI in that and get it in there. And then that's also going to be tied to insurance rates. That's also going to be tied to how much it costs, and also going to be tied to, so it's already there and going. We're just not aware of it. The example I always give is ketchup is a great example. For my whole life, you could buy a bottle of ketchup and it was ketchup. And now when you buy a bottle of ketchup, the second ingredient is sugar. And sugar is in everything. If you look at the ingredient, if you turn, the ingredients anywhere, sugar is in the vast majority of all of our food now. And to me, AI is just like that. And nobody told us to look at ketchup. And now you're hard pressed to go down the line and find a bottle that doesn't have sugar in it that's ketchup. So this is the same kind of thing they're not telling us in terms of where the jobs go, where they don't go. I don't know. I don't think anybody really knows. The one report I have, seen many times now, which is a concern, is software development jobs. because coding can actually be done with AI pretty cleanly and consistently now, and it's only going to get better. And then some of that future projection that I saw around that was that those jobs will actually turn out to be like quality control jobs, which any developer I talked to, that was not why they got filled whatsoever. So they're not thrilled about that. But I mean, how it's going to go, I don't know. In recruiting, I think that there's a day in my not in my so distant future where, AI will be embedded into the tool, and I will get up in the morning and log in, and it will tell me, call these candidates. Like, I'll press a button and here's your 10 candidates, Elizabeth, please call them. It's a diverse slate. They're all interested. They seem to be in the rec range. I think it becomes that kind of a tool first. They are looking at Chat GPT for onboarding processes. That would help a lot of large companies. The problem is when you get into recruiting and talent acquisition, the problem is ethical considerations around, frankly, discrimination. And it can be a big problem real quick. So I hope that they never take the human element out of my job. But by the time I retire, maybe it is. It's hard to say. And then how does that impact you as the job seeker? That's anyone's guess, because I want the ability to have somebody call me and refer a candidate to me. I want to be able to be at a networking event and shake somebody's hand and pull them into the spread. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. But I know that part of the tapping of the brakes on that is the discrimination and the laws that we already have in place to make sure that we are viewing candidates and we have diverse interview panels and also diverse candidate slates. And so I'm curious to see where this all goes. But overall, it's hard to say where this thing is going to go. What I would say in my parting statement on all this is to be aware. If you're aware, you're going to be less afraid. And if you're aware and you're about to get hit really hard with this thing, then you can at least have enough time to pivot and move into another career or gather some other skills or what have you. What you don't want to do is just hang on for dear life and hope it works out, because I guarantee with this one, it's not going to work out. So it's like I had a call from somebody. I did a speaking event like this, and I tell everybody, and I will today, if you want me to review your resume, I'm happy to do that. If you want to take some time and do a 15-minute coaching call with me, come to the call with some questions I can answer about your job search, I'm happy to do that. Just reach out to me. This individual did that. And the first thing I saw on the resume, and when I called him, I said, you've got a problem because that job's been obsolete for like 10 years. So he's like, I just can't find a job. And you could tell he was getting ready to retire. And I'm like, I can't help you. That life passed you by, and you don't want that with ChatGPT. You want to have some awareness about where it is, how it's going to affect your job, where it's going to impact, and embrace what you can and to continue to learn. But to get angry at it, to recoil, to try to resist it, that's really not a good path. And I've had audiences that don't like it, aren't going to adopt it, digging in. And I'm like, okay, well, the train's going to run you over because it's happening. It's happening right now. We won't look at it. So anyway, that's my parting line on ChatGPT. So I'll wind down here. The next slide. I think the next slide is my final splash slide. There it is. So again, if you want to reach out to me, you're more than welcome. Here's some of my contact information. Email is best. If you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, I would highly suggest you follow, because I do post these AI kinds of articles at least 2-3 times a week, because I'm watching it very carefully. And also, if you want to see me speak someplace else, that's another way that you can find my work and follow my work. So what do we have for questions in the queue, Jonathan?
All right, Elizabeth. Well, thank you so much. Fantastic presentation. So folks, we are at the Q&A portion of the webinar. Please post your questions in the comments section, and we'll load them on the stream for Elizabeth to answer. It looks like we got a lot of questions during the during the presentation, which is fantastic. So Elizabeth, before we go on to audience members' questions, I just want to ask one question of my own.
Yeah.
Because I feel like no matter how much information we provide, there's still going to be someone who asks this question.
Okay.
So my question is, can and should I rely solely on ChatGPT for job seeking advice?
No, and I'll tell you why, because it's not a person. And at the end of the day, people hire people. You can have all the tools and all the whatever. you can automate 100 things. You, at the end of the day, you're a person working for a person. And so to get good feedback and honest feedback from a person about how's my interview style, how am I presenting? What do I do next? What, I went to the interview. They said this, I said this, they said this, and then I was out of words. What do I say next? That kind of real-time feedback that I give in my coaching is really valuable. So I think you can get a lot here and it's helpful. I think you can implement a lot here on your own, like a DIY, like do yourself kind of thing. But ultimately, somebody's going to hire you. A robot isn't hiring you. So I think at the end of the day, it's good to have that.
Totally agree. Great answer. Thank you. Again, like I think most people need to understand that this is just a tool and it can't be the end all be all for anything. But it provides a lot of great insight and it's a great tool. So thank you so much. So, all right. So audience member questions. One of our audience members asked, when I try using AI to write resumes, the result is full of hallucinations. I'm assuming incorrect information. Any tips for fixing this?
Yeah, that's a fact, and I kind of brought that up earlier, and that's what I mean. If you send that, we know that's what you did. So what I would say is you take it and then mold it from there, and that's what I've done. I rewrote somebody's resume, a billable client, rewrote the resume, and he was like, oh my gosh, I've never seen anything like this. I'm like, it's one part Chat GPT, it's one part Lions, and it's one part secret sauce, which I won't tell you. And, that combination was unbelievable. But to run it through and think that that's it, it sounds weird. It's just like really odd. It's not going to work.
Right. I mean, it's probably the equivalent of like a entry level job searcher typing in a prompt and then getting a prompt or answer that says, "I worked in this industry for 20 years, but I'm looking for an entry level." Which I mean, it is possible, but unlikely.
Well, what happens is, to their point, what happens is it gets like flowery. It like, I'm the best candidate, the tallest, most actively fit. I have a good diet and all these skills. And it just goes on and on and on. And you're like, oh, this is just, there's too many descriptive words. There's too many flowery words in there. And by the fifth flowery word, a person didn't write this. No one can come up with all these adjectives to describe themselves. And that's what I think that writer is talking about. And what's the tips? There isn't any. You're going to have to take it and then, edit it,
For sure. Thank you. This next question, and I did answer it in the chat earlier, but just so our audience members can know, will this presentation be shared with attendees later? To everyone tuning in, this webinar will be archived on IEEE-USA's channels after the live stream, and they will be available for viewing on demand at any time through the same links that you used to connect today. Next question from same audience member. I'm wondering if these prompts will still work with comparable efficiency with GPT 3.5 versus GPT 4.
I think so. I mean, I would try them. I mean, I don't know, but I would try them. I think they will.
Thanks for the question. And this isn't so much a question, but a statement from one of our audience members, IEEE members, Brendan Godfrey. Thanks for tuning in. Unfortunately, if the large language models does not have much info about it, it will often make things up. So provide it with as much information as possible before asking it to write your resume. Thanks for that insight,
Absolutely.
Brendan.
Yep.
This next question, fairly long, but our audience member Brian asks, so using AI to generate resumes is an interesting use case because it's a fairly unique one in which content is being generated by and for AI. Practically 1% of the 100% of the first pass resume filtering these days is done by automation, typically quite poorly. So do you take a different approach to generating AI content when you know the main target is not human?
Okay, I'm really glad that you asked this, Brian, because I need to squash a bubble here. That's absolutely not true. And there's this myth about the ATS sifts you out and picks these applicants. And when I log in, they go, pick Brian, but don't pick this one. So there's this myth that, and it's not true. So 90% of the time you're going to do an application, you're going to get Workday. Workday is the tool. I don't know that you noticed, like before it wasn't, and now you can't put in any application without going through Workday. I can tell you with 100% accuracy, because I've been in this tool for 8 years, there is nothing in there set up today that pulls you above the others. Now, 15 years ago, they had screening questions that you had to go through, like, do you have a bachelor's degree? Do you have this skill? Do you have that skill? And then you would have to answer all those in the screening. And then when we logged in, we could see in your application, you passed by 50%, by 60%, by 80%. So people would go in and pull all the candidates that were past those benchmark questions and pull them in and interview them. But today, there isn't any of that. And part of that is discrimination reasons is why. Now, I'm going to tip my hat a little further here and tell you a little more. So there is one tool that I personally use called Phenom, and it lays directly on top of Workday. And it's just it's a souped up database tool, frankly. And I've used it, but it's going to search that database. If you're a huge company, yeah, you want to go through a million resumes to find you, or to find the person with Snowflake or these really obscure skills. It works great. It's going to sift through that information, but it's not like you put an application in and then you get pulled or not pulled from that. A human gets up every morning, logs in and reads it. I don't see that changing too much because of discrimination laws, because that's a very hot topic. And frankly, a lot of large companies are cleaning up their backyard on that. And they're showing their shareholders, we are hiring diverse people. That all starts with TA, right? And so there isn't a computer now that's doing that. My concern, fear, worry, in the future, I'll walk in and it will hand me that diverse slate. And I don't get to go anywhere else. I have to do that or show that I've done that first. So I just want to explain the bigger picture, and thank you for your question, because that's a worry of a lot of people, but it's not, you don't have to worry about that. Throw that out. It's not real.
Great. Thank you, Elizabeth. And thank you, Brian, for the question. This next comment from one of our audience members, Bill. So this isn't necessarily a question, but so Bill states, I'm 70 or older, and I routinely use the free Chat GPT as Elizabeth suggests. It's a great source to solicit alternate ideas and wordings, much like discussing something with a knowledgeable peer. I'm not interested in furthering my career, but I've adopted ChatGPT as a casual but very valuable friend. Great to hear that, Bill. It's a great tool. Again, it's not only for the job search. You can use it for many other. You can use it for whatever you want.
Yeah.
As long as it's within lines of using it. But thanks for that. Really great to hear. So our audience member asks, are there any Gen AI certifications that are becoming popular? And Elizabeth, any thoughts?
Yeah. Follow me on LinkedIn right now, and then go through about 2-3 weeks ago. There was some free certifications and some free classes, and somebody technical came right on top and said, thank you so much. I signed up for one. So there are some out there. I can't remember what they were, to be honest with you, but I did post that link in that article.
And folks, the fastest way to find Elizabeth on LinkedIn is through going to her website at lionsology.com. It'll have her contact information and everything that you'll need to get in touch with her. This next question, audience member Glamour asks, how and to what extent can I use ChatGPT for scientific paper writing and improvement? Let me know if there are any regulations on this from IEEE. I can probably answer that next part.
Yeah.
But Elizabeth, any thoughts on the first part?
Just be careful. It's like I said, you really want to verify your facts. It's like really important. I'd use it for a research tool, but it's one research tool. You want to use some other tools to make sure, because it can make things up. And go ahead and you finish the rest of that.
Yeah, and so folks, just to let you know, I'm not going to be a spokesperson for IEEE and our general policy, but to my understanding, IEEE does understand the transformative potential of AI and values it, but have to be careful when using it, especially when it comes to writing research papers or white papers. To my understanding, if you do use the tool in to find information in before your research paper, you do have to cite it specifically. I could be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure that's what one of the policies when it comes to authors for. So thanks for the question. Really, really good question. This Next question. I think it's probably similar to our previous question. What do you think about using AI tools for publishing papers?
Careful.
Um,
That's what I
yeah.
would say. Careful. I mean, you can do it. I mean, here's the thing. If you're in the younger demographic, you just want to jump in here and use only this. If you're the older demographic, they don't want to use it at all. So it's this crazy thing with the tool and how we're adopting it as a society. But I would be very careful using that around papers. Just for fun, Google AI missteps, AI bad papers. Woo, you're going to see all the articles and you're going to see the professions where it didn't work out well for them.
Mhm.
So it's interesting to see, frankly, where does academia land on this, right? I mean,
Mhm.
there's a lot of things that are coming to light with the tool and how we're going to use it as a society.
For sure. And our audience member does follow up with a follow-up question. Might using it as a professional editor be considered as plagiarism? Again, when it comes to writing or being an author for a paper, I have stated that you do need to cite specifically which part of your paper that you use that for. So copying word for word for anything definitely considered plagiarizing, I would think, but I could be wrong about that. So, as Elizabeth said, be careful.
Yeah.
Appreciate the question. Um, Audience member Moira asks, so you had mentioned advising senior qualified candidates in tech. Is there any specific advice you'd give to early career candidates in the tech region?
It's not my space.
Hmm.
It's just not my space. And I'm not like, I don't want to go in that space. It's tough. I'm seeing that it's really difficult. There's, the stories I've been told is there's, the generation getting into tech or, trying to get the internships, trying to get early career jobs. You guys are great about getting online and filling out 500 applications, and then they don't hear anything back. And so that's been going on at least 2 or 3 years now. It's a tough road, but other than that, I couldn't tell you much about it.
Gotcha. Thanks for the question, Moira. Let's see. This next question from our audience member, what is the impact of ChatGPT on innovation and creativity? Also, employers are deploying their own AI detection software.
Yeah, there's a lot of employers. So I can tell you for a fact, large banks, they don't want it in there. There's certain pockets of large companies where they probably are got their own AI detection software in there, and it is a concern for them. That's the big question, right? And I said a few minutes about like the impact on society, because we're not just talking about engineering innovation. You're talking about the whole arts. You're talking about movies. Like, why would you be an actor? Why would you be a singer? Why would maybe in 10 years, that's like nostalgic and cool that you're in a bar or a coffee shop with your guitar. That thing's going away. So it's interesting. And how, as a society, how do we adopt it? Are we okay with AI driven movies and art and so forth? Maybe we are, maybe we're not. It's hard to say how that's going to go. That's an impossible question to ask because um, we don't know how good the tool is going to get. One, we don't know how the younger generation is coming up with their numbers in the generation, how they're going to embrace it. And we don't know how the rest of society is going to embrace it. So it's going to have an impact, right? That I know. That it's probably going to be bumpy, but what that looks like, I don't know.
For sure. Thanks for the insight. And thank you to our audience member for the question. This next question might possibly need a little bit more clarification on what you mean, but David asks, how can one use ChatGPT to keep up with the field without getting overwhelmed?
I really understand him. He does not have to ask anymore. I totally get it
Gotcha.
because I felt like that, David. I took hours of classes fourth quarter. And then the classes I took them again and again and again because and as I was taking them, I started to get overwhelmed because you don't want to be 40 plus and have life pass you by, or 50 or 60, and you're trying to like get the last bit of your career. And now here's this thing that's going to uproot everything, right? So here's what I do, because I have the same thing. And people are like, oh, you're the AI expert. No, I'm not the AI expert. What I do is I look at certain articles and then I share them with my audience. And so what I'm trying to do is have a very broad net in just like a radar, just scoping out there every day, like, where is it? Where is it going? What's moving? What did they tell us? Because a lot of it, we're not going to know. So how I stop getting overwhelmed is I just read articles from good sources. So the first thing I do, if I see a headline that hits me, and again, follow me on LinkedIn and scroll through my posts the last 2 weeks. If it's a headline that interests me, I look at that, but then I always look at the source. Be very careful where you're taking your information. So my sources are like Forbes, Inc., Harvard Business. Those places, they're looking. They got a pulse on it. McKinsey, really reputable places, business news places that are not slanted politically left or right is where I look first. And I always look in the big markets. Frankly, I don't look in tech. I look at financial services and I look at healthcare too, because, once it's in there, it's really in there. So I think how do you become not overwhelmed is just read headlines from reputable sources. And if it catches you, dive in deeper. And the next thing I would tell you is whatever you read, don't have an emotional reaction. Whatever you read, do not have an emotional reaction, because all you're trying to do is gather information to try to figure out where the bouncing ball will land. That's your only intent. And if you start having emotional reactions, then you might deep dive on something that's going to disappear, or now you're running to retool and reskill yourself, and it won't work. So what I would say is, just watch. Right now, it's just watch and be aware. It's great that you're asking this question, because in the audiences where I've given this talk, that's the biggest problem. I'm like screaming at the top of my lungs, like, you really need to understand this is going on. And they're so busy with their phones walking around in their face, they're not reading the right stuff. They're not paying attention at all. They have no idea. They're so not clued into this. So it's great you're asking, but just headlines, good sources, read it and move on. The next day, there's going to be something else.
Thanks for the question, David. And we actually did have an audience member, Dave, who chimed in regarding this question as well. Dave stated, he suggests following superhuman.ai daily newsletter for the latest Gen AI and AI product announcements, use cases, best practices, prompt tips. Thanks for the insight, Dave. Really appreciate
That's
that.
great. Yeah, thanks, Dave.
And he actually chimed in on a question earlier regarding copyrighted and using Chat GPT and AI for writing and publishing. Dave states that copyrighted materials such as IEEE journals, etc., need to be properly cited, same as any essay, research paper. Also, he also provides a great offers great insight. Run a prompt in Chat GPT or any AI tool that'll test written content for plagiarism to test how much the writing was generated by AI. So really great insight. Thanks for that, Dave. Really appreciate it. We're reaching towards the end of the hour. We have a few questions left. Our next question, Elizabeth, audience member asks, so in the future, when AI pulls data from the internet, it will be generated by other AI tools, which may be correct or wrong.
I don't know the answer to that. I don't think it's, and there's other tech people might know and jump in on this question too. That's why I love these presentations when I have technical people, because it's like a collaborative. It's fun. It's really fun. I don't know. I mean, and I don't think they're telling us who's actually feeding the machine, right? I think that, it goes out as spiders and we feed it somewhat. I know that can it be correct or wrong? Yeah. I mean, Gemini had a huge misstep about 2 months ago. What they did was they programmed it. It was very interesting because it was a British woman, I believe, in Google. And so what they did, they programmed it. So when you typed in who was the first president of the United States, George Washington didn't pop up. When you said who is the Pope, it didn't pop up. They literally stripped out all of white history, literally, in the tool. And see, now it's getting weird, because now we got, like, are we rewriting history? So, and how would you know? Like, would you want your child to, like, not know who our founding fathers were and see pictures of other people that were in history, but not in that timeline? So they literally had to yank the whole tool. And if you go back and you look at Elon Musk, he was on fire on X, and he was like, American people, you need to see this. And so can it be right or wrong? Grossly. And now we've got people programming it to say what they want it to say, which is inaccurate at all. So, but how it gets done and all that, but they literally had to like take that down because it was like
Mhm.
not just like wrong, but it was going to steer, it was going to rewrite history, right?
For
So,
sure. For sure. I feel like it's kind of like playing the game of telephone when you're going through multiple people with filters. You go through a lot of filter with AI. If it goes through a lot of
yeah.
filters, different sources, eventually just it really does get stripped down, and the final
Yeah,
product
and
is
I
not
think
what
I
you
think
thought.
like anything else that's big, it's so big it's going to get consolidated down. So that if there's 4 major tools now, I really believe it'll be like one major tool and we'll all go there. I mean, we all go to Google primarily. There were other tools that came in after that, but I mean, primarily everybody walking the earth knows what Google is, right? And I think that over time that's what'll happen. And but what we hope is as it's being built and that as it takes off in its own manner that it's good information, and that there's a social responsibility behind it, and the people that are doing this technology that they're operating ethically, frankly.
For sure. And thank you for the question. So this next question, folks, again, we are approaching the end of the hour. We'll take a few more questions. So this next question from our audience member, kind of similar to previous questions, and I'll go into this a little bit. If I use ChatGPT to refine my own text in a paper, do I have to cite ChatGPT? Real quick, I one of our audience members, I believe it's our past president, Jim Conrad. Great to see you, Jim. Has stated IEEE's official policy for papers: the use of AI generated text in an article shall be disclosed in the acknowledgement section of any paper submitted IEEE conference or periodical. The section of the paper that use AI generated text shall have citation to the AI system to generate the text. So I would probably say, even if it's not for an IEEE paper, best to stick by that policy in general when it comes to using AI for writing papers. But Elizabeth, any additional thoughts that maybe we
No,
haven't
I think
top?
that's a good practice overall. I think that's a really good practice and a fair practice right now.
Thanks for chiming in, Jim. All right, so final question before we close it off. Our audience member Victor says, actually, this isn't a question, but I'm going to read it anyways. Victor states, I use ChatGPT routinely, asking to check grammar and improve clarity, which has worked well. When I was younger, the joke was, I always wanted to be an engineer, and now I are one. This problem
Yeah.
solved.
I
Great to
like that.
hear.
I like it. Yeah. Yeah. I gotta tell you, I've used it too. I rewrote, like I have an outline of services for my coaching and I sat once made friends with it and then I sat and I
Mm,
used it for that and it reads fantastic. My bio, I rewrote much shorter and it reads very well. But I will tell you, I didn't use all of it, right? I use it kind of how he does for grammar and, other ideas and for polish. But I don't use it solely completely because it just doesn't, it's not there yet. I think it will be in even as short as a year, it might just be there. So it's a great way to use it for sure.
for sure. Definitely. All right. Well, everyone, unfortunately, we are out of time. I know we could have gone on to this topic for a long time, and depending on the popularity, maybe we'll bring Elizabeth back to talk further on this, or really great to have you all. So, Elizabeth, thank you so much for joining us today and giving your insight
Sure.
into how to utilize ChatGPT during the job search most efficiently. Really great having you, and looking forward to having you join us again in the future.
Thank you so much. Take care, everybody. Great that you jumped on the call. Thank you so much. Take care.
And thank you to our audience for tuning in for your great questions. IEEE USA webinars are designed to help you find your next job, maintain your career, and learn about other career building strategies and public policy developments that affect your profession. If you enjoyed Elizabeth's presentation, be sure to check out her other ones that she's done with IEEE USA. In a sea of coaches, Elizabeth Lyon stands tall, offering a roadmap crafted from wisdom, experience, and a genuine passion for reshaping careers. If you're seeking more than guidance, a true transformation in your professional life, connect with Elizabeth today. Discover the power of a coaching experience that transcends the ordinary and leads to extraordinary results. And finally, please don't forget to like and subscribe to our channels on social media and check back daily for future live stream updates. Have a great day, everyone.